For decades, they told us this was coming. But we got tired of hearing it, so we told them to shut up. So they did. Unfortunately, it didn't make the destruction of our civilization go away. Then shocks rippled through our system in 2005, 2008, and 2011. They were brutal. But they weren't enough to wake us up. And then came 2018, the biggest and most deadly one of all. But no one noticed. If there is enough time before our final end, historians will write that 2018 was the last great turning point. Everything that comes after it will just be detail. The question is, will you see what's happening before it's too late? Welcome to the Shockcast. I'm John Little on a way too warm Saturday night in southern Taiwan on the Taiwanese version, on October 17th, a week after the Taiwanese version of Independence Day. I think that the weather down here needs an exorcist. They're saying that the high for tomorrow will be 32 degrees. Not Fahrenheit, Celsius. That's like 90 degrees if you're in God Bless America. Anyway, and the backgrounds for these videos? Since August 15th, they've all been pictures of Taiwan, all of them. I'm tired of China's desire to murder 23 million people on this beautiful island, so I want to show a little bit of what they want to destroy. Now, before going on, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. It helps. Really. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter for free at theshockletter.com. You can also find my posts on Facebook and Twitter, and the links for all of that and more are in the description section below. And the main article on omegashock.com has also quite a few links, much more. Most important, thank you for praying for this ministry. The world is becoming more and more unsettled every day, and I want to make sure that you understand what is happening so that you can serve the Lord to the best of your ability in these last days. And now, let's get to today's main topic. The fall of civilization began in 2018. Shortly after returning to the U.S. in 2006, I remember looking at the price of gasoline as I was filling up the gas tank and thinking, wait, our economy cannot survive at that price. Sure enough, it didn't. Not long after that, the mortgage crisis blew up, followed by the economy, and it was the price of fuel that started the wave of mortgage defaults and the failure of the economy. Why? Well, let me remind you of a phrase at the heart of the crisis. Drive till you qualify. Those who could not qualify for the loan close to their place of work would look farther and farther away until they could afford the monthly mortgage payment. And as housing became more and more expensive, people had to drive farther and farther from work to afford the houses that they bought. That was okay as long as the price of gasoline was cheap, and people depended on the price of gasoline being cheap to survive. Everyone was loaded down with debt, but the economy was good. Prices were low, and wages were able to cover almost everything. Almost. So think about the poor guy who needed to drive 2 hours to get to work. He had a new house, a new car, and store loans to pay for all of the new furniture. His credit card, it was maxed out, and then the price of gasoline went up. He was barely making it when gasoline was cheap. So there was a point when he had to make a hard choice. Pay the mortgage or keep driving to work. Well, you already know what the choice was because America suffered a wave of housing loan defaults. People stopped paying their mortgages and banks started to collapse. This led to the crisis of 2008, followed by the years of financial trickery to keep the economy going. The one thing that helped pull us all back from the brink was stupid money flowing into bad investments. In this case, it was fracking. Investors were convinced that the price of oil was going to rise back above $100 a barrel and stay there. So money flooded into badly managed fracking companies with stories that were bigger than reality. This kept the oil flowing, but the oil companies engaged in hydraulic fracturing were not making money, so they had to keep borrowing more and more to pay for all of the wells that they were drilling. And this went on for years as debts piled up and wells ran dry. fracked oil wells do not last very long. Eventually, investors started to realize that fracking companies would never be able to pay off their debts. That's when they stopped buying bonds to pay for drilling and fracking oil wells. This meant that fracking companies had a choice to make: reduce the number of wells that they were drilling or go bankrupt. Most fracking companies did both, and that turning point happened in 2018. That was the peak in the production of oil, and we will never see that production level ever again. Please understand that what that means. Our economy is run on oil. We extract coal using oil. We plant and harvest using oil. We transport our products using oil. As the production of oil declines, the cost of all of those things increase. This means that as oil declines, our economies will decline. Prices will go up, so people will not be able to buy as much as they were able to buy in the past. This has been happening for a while, but will now accelerate. A declining economy makes people angry and fearful. Angry and fearful people often turn to revolution to get what they want. Governments do their best to keep revolutions from happening by bribing their core supporters and trying to convince everyone else that the source of their trouble lies somewhere else than the government. We saw the result of the decision to drill fewer wells in 2019, and fewer wells means less production. To those who were watching the handwriting on the wall, well, is it a coincidence that a fall in oil production in 2019 was followed by a hysterical response to a simple flu-like virus in 2020? Did the political elites need someone to blame for the coming failure of their economies? Were they reading the handwriting on the wall? I don't know for sure, and coincidence is not proof. But I find it interesting that so many politicians were willing to agree to such draconian measures for reasons that made no sense at all. Almost every developed country in the world destroyed its own economy because of a virus that is only as bad as a serious influenza outbreak. And if the official explanation for a thing doesn't make sense, there's always something that they aren't telling you. Again, coincidence is not proof, but the timing is suspicious. But notice the subtext of all these lockdowns. Yeah, climate change. For literally 45 years, they have been screaming about global warming. And before then, they were screaming about global cooling. And yes, I remember picking up books as a kid in the 70s that were making dire predictions about how we were all going to freeze to death. Scientists are morons too. The good thing is that politicians largely ignored the morons yelling about how we will freeze and then bake to death. Well, that's not completely true. They ignored them until they didn't. What changed? The peak in conventional oil production in 2006. From that moment on, the cry to reduce carbon emissions increased and increased until it became deafening. At the same time, they started producing fake science and fake studies to back up their fake claims. Yet the climate didn't change. Just like the claim that we were all going to freeze to death, their claims about global warming did not make sense. Again, if a politician makes a claim that doesn't make sense, it means that there's something else going on. It means that they are hiding something. In 2011, Jean-Claude Juncker famously said, "When it gets serious, you have to lie." When he said that, Juncker was Prime Minister of Luxembourg and President of the Eurogroup. He eventually went on to become President of the European Commission. This guy is one of the inner circle of the elites. He has the elite mindset, and the elites have lived by that statement, "When it gets serious, you have to lie," for thousands of years. To put it another way, the only time that they aren't lying to you is when it isn't serious. So, since they are claiming that climate change is serious, you know that they're lying. The only question is, what are they lying about? Yes, I know that I am speculating that climate change is just a cover for peak oil, but you'll notice that they stopped talking about peak oil a long time ago. We hit the peak in conventional oil production in 2006. We have proven that hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, is too expensive and doesn't work without subsidies. We have the best geophysicist in the business telling us that we will never go back to the oil production levels of 2018. So why aren't the elites talking about peak oil? The answer is very simple. They want to control what is left. They also want to make sure that you don't realize what is actually happening and start a revolution that throws them out of power. If they can get you to meekly absorb their ideas and then passively follow their plans, they win. They get to enjoy the fruits of power while you get to, well, eventually starve. That's where it all begins to fall apart. When unemployment, homelessness, and starvation start to rise, people start asking unpleasant questions about their government. They start wanting things that they used to have that their parents had, and start wondering if their government is the cause of their problems. That's pretty serious, so that's when governments will add to their lies. Since the climate change argument will quickly stop working, they will try to blame someone else for the situation. Those who have oil can expect to be blamed and then invaded. If you have natural gas, you will be invaded. If you are on the invasion path to a source of oil or natural gas, you will be invaded. As oil production continues to decline, economies around the world will decline. When economies decline for long enough, badly enough, countries go to war. And if you remember what I said last week, quote, "The only unknown element is how long it will take for the world to wake up to what Art Berman already knows. You'll know when they do, when the wars begin," close quote. Actually, the wars began in 2011. The Syrian civil war was actually about which gas pipeline would be built. America, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey wanted the pipeline to go through Turkey so that they could get their own percentage of it. Russia and Iran wanted it to go through Syria. You could even make the case that the wars began in 2003 with the invasion of Iraq by the US. Oh, and then there's the current war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Turkey sent a big shipment of weapons to Azerbaijan just before the Azeris started that war. And Turkey has been threatening to invade Armenia from the west. Is there oil involved? Well, an oil pipeline was constructed that goes from Baku up through Georgia, then down to the Mediterranean via Turkey. That pipeline avoids going through Armenia, and you'll notice that Eastern Orthodox Georgia has been careful not to help Eastern Orthodox Armenia, even though they share a similar religion and similar culture. Turkey is also starting a war with Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. Shots haven't been fired yet, but it's only a matter of time before the conflict begins and ships are sunk. Erdogan is a truly vile and evil creature. The problem is that all of our politicians are vile and evil creatures. They've been telling us that we need to cut back in energy use because of climate change, when the reality is that they just want to preserve the amount of oil and coal that is left for themselves. That's why the hysteria over SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 is so suspicious. They failed in their goals for climate change, and so they've locked us down. And as our economies crash, they'll claim that it was a virus and not the failure of energy production. Oh, and they'll say that it wasn't their fault. It never is, right? All of that sounds bizarre, but we live in the most unprecedented and bizarre time in human history. For the first time in thousands of years, we face a steep decline in energy. And that means a steep decline in the economy, and a steep decline in the economy means a steep increase in war. Lots of war. Do you remember what World War II was all about? It was about oil. Hitler didn't have any, so he invaded the Soviet Union, which did. He also attempted an invasion of the Middle East, also for oil. Imperial Japan also needed oil, which was why they were extending their empire southwards towards Indonesia, which had oil. The rape, looting, and genocide perpetrated by Hitler and Hirohito were merely a side effect of their evil designs. But all of that was towards the beginning of the oil production curve. and their weapons were less effective than ours are now. But even with less effective weapons, the Nazis and Japanese still managed to cause the death of 3% of the world's population. Our weapons are far, far more effective, and there are far, far more of us who are vulnerable to the effects of war, more so than the 1940s. Worse, we are on the downside of the oil production curve. Germany and Japan fought World War II out of greed. Our nations will fight World War III out of desperation. And far more than just 3% of the world's population will die. The coming years will be the deadliest era in human history. It will also be the time when civilization as we know it tears itself apart. It will crumble around us, and those who are desperate to keep their power will convince the ignorant among us to fight and scrabble for what's left. Violence and destruction will be everywhere as our societies claw themselves apart. Will you be ready when that happens? As I was writing all of that on Thursday and Friday, I took a moment to watch this video. It's titled, "There's No Tomorrow, Limits to Growth and the Future." It's from 2011, and I've been talking about peak oil from even the very first post of a mega shock in August of 2011. Just a few months after that video came out, and you'll also notice that there isn't one mention of climate change in that video, not one. But it also spells disaster for all of us. All of us. The first 2 minutes of the video are garbage. The creator of the video believes in evolution, which is foolish, but the rest is dead on accurate. It even ends with a far more positive outlook than I am willing to believe. If you want to escape what is coming, find some good land and start farming. Then convince your community to buy locally. In fact, be like the Amish. If we were all like the Amish, we would not have such a bleak future. But don't tell Mrs. Little, because she wants me to get some farmland and raise chickens. Do you know how mean chickens are? It's a good thing that God has other plans for me. At least I think that he has other plans for me. Other plans than raising chickens. But that's a story for another time. I love Mrs. Little, but I'm not going to raise chickens. The thing that you need to do right now is watch that video. There's no tomorrow. If there are parts that you do not understand or even don't like, leave a comment in the comment section. The one thing that you should not do is ignore the point that is being made. Our civilization has begun to die. You need to be ready for what that means. And now for something completely different. I finally broke down and did the one thing that I have not had to do in 40 years. Take a computer back to the computer store to either be fixed or replaced. They said that they would call us when they figured out what the problem was, and we haven't heard a peep from them in 3 days. But I have been hearing this message. Wait. Hello? Hello? Oh, press 1. Package. Several times over the past few days from 5 separate phone numbers, I've been getting that message. No, I do not have a package waiting for me. No, I did not order anything. It's a scam from China. And Mrs. Little tells me that it's a very common scam. Worse, it's a message in Chinese sent to an American phone number that is registered to an American address. In my name. There should be no reason for such a message to be sent to me. There is no reason why this scam message would be sent to me, except one. This guy is the only reason why I would be getting scam voicemail messages from China. His name is Jensen Huang, and he is CEO, co-founder of, and president of NVIDIA. His company sent my data to China so that they could send scam voice messages to try and get me to do who knows what. He's Taiwanese. His company is Taiwanese, with a headquarters in Taiwan. Yet his company has been pushing NVIDIA users to install his application, which sent my private information to China. In fact, when you install the GeForce drivers for your NVIDIA video card, you have to choose not to install their disgusting software. What is the name of this glorious bit of evil malware? GeForce Experience. If you have any NVIDIA hardware on your computer or in your computer, you probably have that software installed. And if they stole my information and sent it to China, they will steal yours and probably do the same with it. NVIDIA makes great hardware, but they've chosen to dance with the devil, China. And it was Jensen Huang who chose to do so. Jensen didn't need to do a deal with the devil. He didn't need to get in bed with China, but he chose to do it anyway. And no, I don't know which deal he made that promised to hand over private information to the Chinese government. I don't need to know, since I already know the result. Worse, Jensen Huang had to have known that what he was doing was probably going to compromise the security of almost every computer in Taiwan, and maybe the computers around the world. Does he care? Of course not. He's worth billions of dollars, and since he's also an American citizen, he probably doesn't care if his software aids China in the destruction of Taiwan. After all, with that much money, you don't need a conscience. But wait, is it possible that Jensen does not know that his software is grabbing private information and sending it to China? Okay, yes, it's possible that he's stupid. It's possible that he does not know what his employees have been doing in Taiwan and China and elsewhere. But it is hard to believe that someone that smart can be so stupid. Do you believe that Bill Gates did not know about the NSA functions that were built into Windows NT? I'm sorry, but no one is that stupid. Bill Gates knowingly gave U.S. intelligence agencies a backdoor into his operating system. He didn't just know about it. He didn't just agree to it. He had an active and enthusiastic role in it. And the NSA had to have given him lots of money to make it possible. And the same thing is true about Jensen Huang and his disgusting GeForce Experience software. But the really revolting thing is that not only did NVIDIA send my personal information to China and Chinese intelligence services, but they gave it to Chinese scammers. That's a level of corruption that is so petty that it's almost too much to believe. Jensen Huang knows about what his software is doing. It would not have been a minor decision on his part to gather our private data and send it somewhere. And since he knows, he's criminally liable for what his software is doing. Will he be held accountable? Of course not. Was Bill Gates held accountable for putting backdoors, unsecured or poorly secured backdoors into Windows? Of course not. The elites are not your friend and will never be held accountable for what they have done, even if a little country like Taiwan is destroyed because of it. The massacre of 23 million Taiwanese is nothing if you get billions of dollars out of it. That's it for this Shockcast. Again, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. And please share this video or the MP3. After you have done all that, please leave a comment. I like seeing what you have to say about what was said here. Your input is welcome. Then help keep Omega Shock and the Shockcast alive. There's a link below that can help you do that. I did this for free for 8 years. Now I can't. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com and read my books for free, When Jacob Returns and Ezekiel's Fire. You do not want to get caught by what is coming.